Maya Chen stared at the pristine white walls of Lincoln High School and felt her stomach twist into knots. After 3 years fighting the Zarathi invasion fleet across 7 star systems, walking through these peaceful hallways felt more terrifying than dodging plasma fire in the asteroid fields of Kepler 442. The morning sun streamed through tall windows, casting long shadows across polished floors that had never seen combat boots or emergency medical stations. Students laughed and chatted as they moved between classes, their biggest concerns apparently involving homework assignments and weekend plans. Maya adjusted her backpack straps and tried to remember how to breathe normally. "You must be Maya," a cheerful voice called out. A woman in her 40s approached with a warm smile and a clipboard. "I'm Mrs. Henderson, your guidance counselor. Ready for your first day back in civilian education?" Maya nodded, though her throat felt too tight to speak. Back on the front lines, she had commanded a squad of 12 soldiers, coordinating orbital strikes and leading ground assaults against alien war machines the size of city blocks. Here, she was just another 17-year-old trying to fit in with teenagers who had never left Earth's atmosphere. "Your academic records show some gaps, which is completely understandable given your service," Mrs. Henderson continued as they walked down the main corridor. "We've placed you in advanced classes where possible, but don't worry about catching up immediately. Take your time adjusting." They passed groups of students clustered around lockers, their conversations a mixture of excitement and teenage drama. Maya caught fragments of discussions about upcoming tests, relationship problems, and something called prom committee. The normalcy of it all made her feel like an alien visitor herself. "Here's your first class," Mrs. Henderson announced, stopping outside a door marked AP Physics, Mr. Rodriguez. "I think you'll find the material interesting, given your background." Maya entered the classroom and immediately assessed the layout from habit. 24 desks arranged in 6 rows, 2 exits, windows facing east with no obvious sniper positions in the surrounding buildings. She caught herself and forced her shoulders to relax. This was high school physics, not a tactical briefing. "Class, we have a new student joining us today," Mr. Rodriguez announced as Maya found an empty seat in the back row. "Maya Chen, would you like to tell us a little about yourself?" Every head turned toward her, and Maya felt the familiar weight of being evaluated. But instead of enemy combatants checking for weaknesses, these were curious teenagers wondering if she would fit into their social ecosystem. The silence stretched uncomfortably long before she managed to speak. "I'm 17. I just moved here from away. I like science." A few students chuckled at her awkwardness, but not unkindly. Mr. Rodriguez nodded encouragingly and began his lesson on quantum mechanics. Maya found herself genuinely interested despite her nerves. The theoretical frameworks he discussed had practical applications in the faster-than-light communication systems she had used to coordinate with Fleet Command. During lunch break, Maya sat alone at a corner table in the cafeteria, observing the complex social dynamics around her. Groups formed and reformed with unspoken rules that seemed just as intricate as military protocol. Athletes clustered near the windows, academic overachievers occupied the center tables, and various other tribes staked out their territorial claims. "Mind if I sit here?" A girl with short black hair and paint-stained fingers gestured to the empty chair across from Maya. "I'm Alex. You're the new girl everyone's talking about, right?" Maya nodded cautiously. "What are they saying?" "Oh, the usual speculation. Some think you're from a military family because of how you walk. Others think you're in witness protection because you won't talk about where you're from." Alex unwrapped a sandwich and grinned. "I think you're just shy and overwhelmed by all the teenage chaos. High school can be brutal when you're not used to it." "You could say that," Maya replied, surprised by Alex's directness. "Want some advice? Find your tribe quickly, or you'll spend the rest of the year floating between social groups without really belonging anywhere. What are you interested in? Sports? Drama? Academic decathlon?" Maya considered the question. What was she interested in, beyond survival and military strategy? Before the war, she had enjoyed reading science fiction novels and tinkering with electronics. Those interests seemed impossibly distant now, like memories from someone else's life. "I used to like building things," she said finally. Taking apart electronics to see how they worked? Alex's eyes lit up. Perfect. You should check out the robotics club. We meet after school on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Mr. Kim runs it, and he's pretty cool about letting people work on independent projects. The afternoon brought more classes and more awkward introductions. In English literature, they were discussing themes of heroism in classic novels. Maya listened as her classmates debated whether Achilles was brave or just reckless, whether heroism required noble motivation or if results were all that mattered. Their innocent philosophical discussions felt surreal after witnessing actual heroism in the field. During chemistry lab, Maya's partner was a nervous boy named David, who apologized every time he measured something incorrectly. Maya found herself automatically taking charge, organizing their materials with military efficiency and completing the experiment in half the allocated time. Their teacher, Ms. Foster, noticed the exceptional results and complimented their teamwork. "How did you know to adjust the pH levels like that?" David asked as they cleaned their workstation. "That wasn't in the instructions." Maya realized she had applied field knowledge from emergency medical protocols without thinking. "Just seemed logical," she said, hoping he wouldn't press for details. The final bell rang at 3:15, and students poured out of classrooms with the enthusiasm of prisoners granted temporary release. Maya walked slowly toward the exit, processing the overwhelming sensory input of her first day. The cacophony of voices, the smell of cleaning chemicals and teenage cologne, the visual chaos of colorful posters and handmade decorations. It was all so different from the sterile functionality of military installations. "Maya!" Alex called out from across the hallway. "Want to check out the robotics lab? Mr. Kim is there now if you want to meet him." Maya hesitated. Part of her wanted to retreat to the small apartment she shared with her guardian to process the day's experiences in solitude. But another part recognized that Alex was offering something valuable, a chance to connect with peers who shared at least one interest. "Sure," she decided. The robotics lab occupied a large room in the school's basement, filled with workbenches, computer terminals, and partially assembled mechanical projects. Students worked in small groups, their conversations mixing technical jargon with casual banter. The atmosphere reminded Maya of the engineering bay aboard the carrier ship Valkyrie, minus the constant threat of enemy attack. Mr. E. Kim was a Korean-American man in his 30s who wore a NASA t-shirt and had genuine enthusiasm for his subject. "Alex tells me you're interested in electronics," he said after introductions. "Any particular area? Programming? Circuit design? Mechanical systems?" "All of it, really," Maya replied. "I like understanding how complex systems work together." "Excellent. We're working on several projects right now. There's a competition team building autonomous rovers, another group designing prosthetic limbs, and some individual projects that range from smart home systems to small satellites." Maya's attention sharpened at the mention of satellites. During the war, she had become intimately familiar with orbital mechanics and communication arrays. "What kind of satellites?" "CubeSats, mostly. Small research platforms that can be launched relatively cheaply. Sarah over there is working on one designed to monitor atmospheric conditions." He pointed to a girl hunched over a computer, surrounded by circuit boards and technical manuals. Maya felt a spark of genuine interest for the first time since arriving at school. "Could I help with that project?" "Sarah's pretty protective of her work, but I'm sure she could use assistance. Why don't you introduce yourself?" Sarah turned out to be a senior with an impressive grasp of aerospace engineering principles. She explained her project with passionate intensity, describing plans to deploy sensor packages that could provide early warning for severe weather systems. Maya listened carefully, occasionally asking technical questions that seemed to surprise Sarah with their sophistication. "Where did you learn about satellite communication protocols?" Sarah asked eventually. Maya felt the familiar tightness in her chest. How could she explain that she had spent months coordinating with orbital reconnaissance platforms, relaying targeting data for precision strikes against enemy installations? "I read a lot," she said weakly. Sarah studied her for a moment, then shrugged. "Well, if you're serious about helping, I could use someone who understands signal processing. The current communication array is functional but inefficient. Think you could take a look?" Maya spent the next hour examining Sarah's designs, suggesting modifications based on her field experience with similar systems. She was careful to frame her knowledge in theoretical terms, but her recommendations were specific and practical. Sarah grew increasingly excited as Maya identified several optimization opportunities. "This is incredible," Sarah said, as Maya sketched out an improved antenna configuration. "You've just solved three problems I've been struggling with for weeks. Are you sure you're only 17? Maya forced a smile. "Sometimes I feel much older." The robotics club meeting lasted until 5 o'clock. As students packed up their projects and headed home, Maya felt something she had not experienced in years, a sense of belonging based on shared interests rather than shared trauma. For a few hours, she had been able to use her knowledge and skills in a positive context, helping with scientific research instead of planning military operations. Alex walked with her toward the parking lot, chattering about various club projects and upcoming competitions. "You'll love it here once you get used to the rhythm," she said. "High school has its own kind of chaos, but it's mostly harmless." Maya nodded, though she suspected her definition of chaos was somewhat different from Alex's. Still, the day had gone better than expected. She had survived her first encounter with civilian education and even found a potential pathway to social integration. As she waited for the city bus that would take her home, Maya reflected on the strange contrast between her current life and her recent past. 6 months ago, she had been coordinating evacuation procedures for an entire colony world as Zarathi forces advanced through the system. Today, her biggest challenge had been remembering to raise her hand before speaking in class. The transition from soldier to student was proving more difficult than any battlefield she had faced. Combat had clear objectives and defined rules of engagement. High school seemed to operate on unwritten social protocols that shifted constantly. But perhaps, with time and patience, she could learn to navigate this new terrain as effectively as she had mastered the art of war. The bus arrived with a hydraulic hiss, and Maya climbed aboard for the journey back to her temporary guardian's apartment. Through the window, she watched Lincoln High School recede into the distance, already planning her approach for tomorrow's challenges. Some battles were won through overwhelming force, others through careful strategy and patience. Maya suspected that conquering high school would require the latter approach, and she was determined to emerge victorious from this new kind of campaign. 3 weeks into her civilian education experiment, Maya Chen discovered that high school politics were almost as complex as interstellar warfare. The difference was that instead of plasma rifles and orbital bombardments, students wielded gossip, social exclusion, and carefully orchestrated humiliation campaigns. The trouble started during fourth period chemistry when Brad Morrison, a linebacker who seemed to believe that athletic prowess granted him universal authority, decided to test the new girl's boundaries. Maya was working alone at her lab station, having learned that most students preferred to partner with friends rather than the mysterious transfer student who never talked about her past. "Hey, military girl," Brad called out loud enough for the entire class to hear. "I heard you think you're some kind of soldier. My dad's in the National Guard, and he says kids like you are just playing dress-up." Maya continued measuring chemical compounds with precision, ignoring the provocation. She had faced down Zarathi shock troops without flinching. She could certainly handle an oversized teenager with authority issues. "I'm talking to you," Brad pressed, moving closer to her workstation. "Don't you have any respect for real veterans?" The irony was almost painful. Maya had served alongside genuine heroes who had sacrificed everything to protect human colonies. She had watched good soldiers die in her arms, had made life-or-death decisions that affected thousands of civilians. But Brad Morrison's definition of military service apparently began and ended with weekend drills at the local armory. "I'm just trying to complete the experiment," Maya said quietly, hoping to diffuse the situation. "See? She won't even admit it. Probably got kicked out of some JROTC program and now she's pretending to be special." Brad's voice carried across the classroom, drawing attention from other students who were beginning to gather around. Maya felt her jaw tighten. During her service, she had learned to control her anger, to channel aggression into tactical thinking. But something about Brad's casual dismissal of experiences she could never fully explain triggered a response she thought she had mastered. "You don't know anything about my service," she said, her voice still controlled but carrying an edge that made several nearby students step back instinctively. Brad laughed, emboldened by what he perceived as weakness. "Service? What service? You're 17 years old. The closest you've been to combat is Call of Duty." That was when Maya's carefully constructed civilian facade began to crack. She turned from her lab station to face Brad directly, and something in her posture made the laughter die in his throat. For just a moment, he was looking at someone who had killed enemy combatants in hand-to-hand fighting, who had called in artillery strikes on her own position to prevent enemy advancement, who carried scars from battles fought light years from Earth. "You want to know about service?" Maya's voice was deadly quiet now. "I've seen cities burn while evacuation ships fled into hyperspace. I've held dying soldiers who were barely older than you, watching them bleed out in crater fields under alien suns. I've made decisions that meant some people lived and others died, and I carry those choices with me every single day." The chemistry lab had gone completely silent. Even Ms. Foster, who had been grading papers at her desk, looked up with concern. Maya realized she had said too much, revealed details that would raise impossible questions. But the words had poured out like water through a broken dam. Brad's face had gone pale. Whatever response he had expected, it was not this glimpse into genuine trauma and loss. Look, I didn't mean..." "You didn't mean what? To trivialize experiences you can't comprehend? To mock service members because it makes you feel superior?" Maya's hands were trembling slightly, but her voice remained steady. "You think playing weekend warrior makes your father an expert on military service? Try coordinating orbital defense platforms while enemy capital ships pound your position. Try explaining to a mother why her 12-year-old son won't be coming home because the evacuation shuttle was 10 seconds too slow." Several students were recording the confrontation with their phones now, which made Maya's situation exponentially worse. She had just provided evidence of impossible experiences, created a viral moment that would follow her for the rest of her time at Lincoln High. "Ms. Chen," Ms. Foster's voice cut through the tension. "Perhaps you should visit the counselor's office. Mr. Morrison, return to your seat immediately." Maya gathered her materials with military efficiency, her movements precise despite the emotional turmoil churning inside her. As she walked toward the door, she heard whispered conversations starting behind her, students trying to make sense of what they had just witnessed. In the hallway, Maya found herself shaking with delayed reaction. She had survived 3 years of interstellar combat, but one obnoxious teenager had broken through her psychological defenses in minutes. The realization was both humiliating and terrifying. Mrs. Henderson's office provided a temporary refuge, but Maya knew that sanctuary was temporary. The guidance counselor listened with practiced patience as Maya provided a carefully edited version of the incident, omitting the specific details that would raise unanswerable questions. "It sounds like you had a very intense reaction to what was probably just typical teenage posturing," Mrs. Henderson said gently. "Would you like to talk about what triggered such a strong response?" Maya stared at her hands, noting the small scars that most people assumed came from typical teenage accidents. How could she explain that those marks came from shrapnel wounds and equipment malfunctions aboard starships? How could she describe the weight of command responsibility, the guilt of survival, the nightmares that came from seeing too much death too young? "I've had some difficult experiences," she said finally. "Things that are hard to talk about. Have you considered speaking with a professional counselor? Someone who specializes in trauma therapy?" The suggestion made Maya want to laugh, but not with humor. What trauma therapist was qualified to help someone process the psychological effects of interstellar warfare? What therapeutic framework existed for treating post-traumatic stress from battles that had never officially happened? "I'll think about it," Maya lied. The rest of the school day passed in a haze of whispered conversations and curious stares. By lunchtime, at least 3 different versions of the chemistry lab incident were circulating through the student body. In one version, Maya had threatened to physically assault Brad. In another, she claimed to be a Navy SEAL. The third suggested she was suffering from some kind of mental breakdown. Alex found Maya in the library during lunch, where she had retreated to avoid the cafeteria's social minefield. "So, I heard you had an interesting morning," Alex said, settling into a nearby chair with her usual directness. "Which version did you hear?" Maya asked wearily. "All of them, plus two I'm pretty sure someone made up entirely. Want to tell me what actually happened?" Maya appreciated Alex's straightforward approach, but she still could not provide the whole truth. "Brad Morrison decided to test me. I reacted more strongly than I should have. Yeah, Brad's an ass. He picks on anyone who seems different or vulnerable. Usually people just ignore him or tell him to shut up." Alex studied Maya's expression carefully. "But you didn't react like someone who was just annoyed. You looked like someone who had actually been through something serious." The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Sarah from the robotics club, who approached their table with obvious hesitation. "Maya, I hope you don't mind me asking, but some people are saying you have military experience. Is that why you knew so much about satellite communication systems?" Maya felt trapped between honesty and necessity. These were the first people at Lincoln High who had shown genuine friendship, and they deserved better than continued deception. But the truth would lead to investigations, questions from authorities, eventual discovery of classified information that could compromise ongoing military operations. "My background is complicated," Maya said carefully. "I can't really talk about all of it." Sarah nodded thoughtfully. "My uncle was in special forces. He came back from deployment changed, and he never wanted to discuss what happened overseas. PTSD is real, and it affects people differently." The assumption that Maya was dealing with conventional military trauma provided a convenient explanation that she could neither confirm nor deny. It was close enough to the truth to feel authentic while remaining safely within the bounds of plausible civilian experience. "Something like that," Maya agreed. Over the following weeks, the chemistry lab incident evolved into a defining moment in Maya's social integration. Students who had previously ignored her now watched with mixture of curiosity and respect. Brad Morrison avoided her entirely, which suited Maya perfectly. But the increased attention also brought unwanted scrutiny from teachers and administrators. Mr. Rodriguez approached her after physics class one afternoon, his expression concerned but kind. "Maya, I've noticed that you seem to have an unusually advanced understanding of certain concepts. Your answers to questions about quantum mechanics and relativity are sophisticated beyond typical high school level." Maya had been dreading this conversation. Her knowledge of physics came from practical application aboard faster-than-light vessels, where quantum field manipulation was a daily necessity rather than theoretical exercise. "I read a lot of science fiction," she offered weakly. "Science fiction doesn't usually include detailed explanations of Alcubierre drive mathematics," Mr. Rodriguez replied, with a knowing smile. "Look, I'm not trying to pry into your personal life, but if you have genuine aptitude in these areas, I'd like to help you pursue more advanced opportunities." He handed her a flyer advertising a regional science competition sponsored by NASA and several aerospace companies. Teams of high school students compete to design theoretical solutions to current space exploration challenges. This year's focus is on sustainable propulsion systems for interplanetary travel. Maya examined the flyer with growing interest. The competition parameters described exactly the kind of engineering problems she had worked on during her military service, but framed as hypothetical exercises rather than urgent operational requirements. "I'd need teammates," she said. "I think Sarah and Alex would be excellent collaborators. And there are other students in the robotics club who might be interested." The prospect of working on genuine technical challenges with peers who shared her interests was appealing, but Maya worried about revealing too much specialized knowledge. How could she contribute meaningfully without exposing the fact that she had direct experience with the technologies they would be designing? That afternoon in robotics club, she mentioned the competition to Alex and Sarah. Both responded with immediate enthusiasm, and soon they were joined by 3 other students who brought complementary skills in programming, materials science, and mathematical modeling. "What should our project focus on?" Sarah asked as they gathered around a whiteboard for their first brainstorming session. "Fusion rockets? Ion drives? Solar sails?" Maya found herself thinking about the various propulsion systems she had encountered during her service. The Zarathi used some kind of exotic matter manipulation that human scientists were still trying to understand. Human ships relied primarily on quantum vacuum extraction drives, which were efficient but required enormous amounts of initial energy input. What if we focused on hybrid systems? Maya suggested. Something that combines multiple propulsion methods to optimize for different mission phases? That's ambitious, said Kevin, a junior who specialized in computer modeling. Most competition entries focus on improving single technologies. But that's exactly why a hybrid approach might win, Alex pointed out. It shows systems thinking instead of just technical optimization. Maya began sketching concepts on the whiteboard, drawing from her practical experience while being careful to frame everything in theoretical terms. She outlined a three-stage propulsion system that would use different technologies for acceleration, cruise, and deceleration phases of interplanetary journeys. This is brilliant, Sarah said, studying the preliminary designs. The energy efficiency curves alone would be revolutionary. Where did this idea come from? Maya felt the familiar tension between honesty and security. I was thinking about how natural systems often use multiple strategies to accomplish complex tasks, like how birds use different flight patterns for takeoff, cruising, and landing. It was a reasonable explanation, and her teammates accepted it without question. But Maya knew that her real inspiration came from watching fleet operations during the evacuation of Kepler 438b, where ships had to rapidly transition between different propulsion modes to avoid enemy interception. Over the following weeks, their team met regularly to develop their competition entry. Maya found herself enjoying the collaborative process, the intellectual challenge of solving complex problems without the pressure of life or death consequences. For the first time since returning to Earth, she felt like she was using her skills and knowledge in a purely positive context. The work also provided a social framework that helped her navigate the broader complexities of high school life. Her teammates became genuine friends, people who valued her contributions and accepted her quirks without demanding explanations for her sometimes unusual perspectives. But Maya's growing comfort with civilian life was shattered one evening when she returned to her guardian's apartment to find two people waiting in the living room. Agent Martinez and Agent Kim from the Department of Extraterrestrial Affairs sat stiffly on the couch, their government identification prominently displayed. "Maya," Agent Martinez said with professional courtesy, "we need to discuss some concerns about your recent activities." Maya's blood turned cold as she stared at the two DEA agents sitting in her guardian's living room. Agent Martinez was a thin woman in her 40s with sharp eyes that missed nothing, while Agent Kim appeared younger but carried himself with a rigid posture of someone accustomed to military protocols. Between them sat Maya's legal guardian, Dr. Ellen Vasquez, whose nervous expression suggested this was not a social visit. "Please sit down, Maya," Dr. Vasquez said gently. She was a retired psychology professor who had volunteered to provide temporary housing for veterans transitioning back to civilian life, though she had never been told the full details of Maya's service record. Agent Martinez opened a tablet and swiped through several documents before speaking. "Maya, we've been monitoring your integration progress, and some concerns have been raised about potential security breaches." "I haven't told anyone anything classified," Maya said quickly, settling into a chair across from the agents. "We know," Agent Kim replied. "Your discretion has been exemplary, considering the circumstances. However, your recent academic activities have attracted attention from some unexpected sources." Agent Martinez turned her tablet screen toward Maya, displaying a series of technical drawings and mathematical equations. Maya recognized them immediately. They were her contributions to the NASA competition project, the hybrid propulsion system design she had developed with her team. "These schematics were flagged by our automated monitoring systems," Agent Martinez explained. "The theoretical framework you've outlined incorporates principles that are currently classified at the highest levels of government clearance." Maya felt a sinking sensation in her stomach. "But I presented everything as theoretical speculation. I never mentioned specific technologies or operational details." "The problem isn't what you said," Agent Kim continued. "It's what you knew. The mathematical relationships you've derived independently match classified research that took our best scientists 3 years to develop." Your hybrid drive concept mirrors theoretical work being conducted at Area 51, research that has never been publicly disclosed. Dr. Vasquez looked confused and concerned. I don't understand. Maya is just a 17-year-old girl participating in a high school science competition. How could she possibly have access to classified information? The agents exchanged a meaningful glance. Maya realized that her guardian had never been briefed on the true nature of her background, had been told only that Maya was a military dependent who needed temporary placement while her family situation was resolved. Dr. Vasquez, Agent Martinez said carefully, Maya's background is more complex than you were initially informed. She has had exposure to sensitive information through her previous educational experiences. Maya watched her guardian's expression shift from confusion to growing alarm. Dr. Vasquez had been nothing but kind and supportive during Maya's transition, providing a stable home environment without asking probing questions about Maya's past. Now that Sanctuary was being threatened by the revelation that her houseguest was not who she appeared to be. The immediate issue, Agent Kim continued, is that your competition submission has been noticed by foreign intelligence services. We've intercepted communications suggesting that certain hostile entities are very interested in your team's work. Hostile entities? Maya asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. Zarathi agents operating on Earth, Agent Martinez confirmed. They're particularly interested in human technological developments that might affect the strategic balance of the ongoing conflict. Maya felt the familiar weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders. She had hoped that her war was over, that she could finally live a normal life without the constant pressure of protecting humanity from alien invasion. But it seemed that even in high school, she could not escape the broader conflict that continued to rage across the galaxy. What do you need me to do? She asked, slipping automatically back into military mindset. For now. Nothing dramatic, Agent Kim replied. Continue your normal school activities, but be aware that you're being watched. We're placing additional security around Lincoln High, though it will be discreet enough not to alarm other students. What about my team, my friends? Are they in danger? Agent Martinez considered the question carefully. Probably not directly. The Zarathi are likely more interested in identifying you specifically rather than targeting random civilians, but we'll be monitoring the situation closely. Dr. Vasquez finally found her voice. Are you telling me that Maya is some kind of government asset? That I've been harboring a spy? A soldier? Maya is a decorated veteran who served with distinction in classified operations, Agent Kim said diplomatically. She's been placed in civilian life as part of a rehabilitation program, not as an active intelligence asset. Maya watched her guardian process this information, seeing the trust and comfort they had built together beginning to crumble. Dr. Vasquez had opened her home to what she thought was a troubled teenager who needed stability and support. Learning that Maya was actually a veteran of interstellar warfare with a target on her back changed everything. I understand if you want me to leave, Maya said quietly. I never intended to put you at risk. Dr. Vasquez was silent for a long moment, studying Maya's face with professional insight. How old were you when you enlisted? She asked finally. 14, Maya admitted. The invasion escalated faster than anyone expected. They needed every qualified person they could find, regardless of age. And you've been fighting for 3 years, while other kids your age were worrying about homework and dating? Maya nodded, unable to meet her guardian's eyes. When stated so plainly, the magnitude of what had been stolen from her childhood became overwhelmingly clear. Dr. Vasquez turned to the agents with visible anger. And now you're asking her to continue carrying this burden? She should be focusing on healing, on learning how to be a normal teenager, not worrying about alien assassins at her high school. We're not asking her to return to active duty, Agent Martinez clarified. We simply need her to be aware of the potential threat and take reasonable precautions. Reasonable precautions, Dr. Vasquez repeated with bitter laughter. Like what? Checking her locker for bombs? Wondering if her lab partners are enemy agents? This child has already sacrificed enough. Maya felt a surge of gratitude toward her guardian, but also a familiar sense of duty that would not be ignored. Dr. Vasquez, I appreciate your concern, but this is my responsibility. If Zarathi agents are operating on Earth, if they're targeting my school because of me, then I need to help stop them. You need to be 17 years old, Dr. Vasquez replied firmly. You need to go to prom and worry about college applications and make the kinds of mistakes that normal teenagers make. Agent Kim's tablet chimed with an incoming message. He read it quickly, then looked up with obvious concern. We may not have the luxury of philosophical debate. Our surveillance teams report unusual activity around the school. At least 2 individuals with suspected Zarathi technology have been observed in the area. Maya felt her training reassert itself, pushing aside the emotional complexity of the situation. What kind of technology? Portable cloaking devices, probably. Our sensors are picking up electromagnetic signatures consistent with their stealth systems, but we can't get visual confirmation. They're conducting reconnaissance, Maya said, her mind automatically shifting into tactical analysis mode. Probably trying to identify my daily patterns, figure out the best time and place for either extraction or elimination. Dr. Vasquez stared at Maya in shock, seeing for the first time the soldier beneath the teenage exterior. The transformation was subtle but unmistakable. Maya's posture straightened, her voice became crisp and authoritative. Her eyes took on the focused alertness of someone accustomed to life-or-death decision-making. What are our defensive options? Maya continued, addressing the agents as equals rather than authority figures. Agent Martinez pulled up a schematic of Lincoln High School on her tablet. We've positioned sniper teams on the surrounding buildings and have undercover agents posing as substitute teachers. The local police have been briefed on emergency procedures, though they haven't been told about the extraterrestrial angle. What about civilian evacuation protocols? That's where things get complicated, Agent Kim admitted. We can't evacuate the entire school without causing panic and potentially exposing the existence of the Zarathi to the general public. The official policy is still complete denial of alien contact. Maya studied the school layout, automatically identifying defensive positions, escape routes, and potential choke points. Her teammates in the robotics club would be particularly vulnerable during their afternoon meeting, a regular gathering that made them predictable targets if the Zarathi decided to use her friends as leverage. I need to warn Alex and Sarah, Maya said. Absolutely not, Agent Martinez replied. Any deviation from normal behavior could alert the surveillance teams that were aware of their presence. Then what? I just wait for them to make their move and hope our security measures are sufficient? Dr. Vasquez watched this exchange with growing horror. Listen to yourselves. You're talking about using a high school as a battlefield, putting hundreds of innocent children at risk. Surely there's a better way. Agent Kim checked his tablet again, then looked up with grim determination. Actually, there might be. Maya, how would you feel about serving as bait? The proposal was both elegant and terrifying in its simplicity. Maya would follow her normal routine, but with hidden modifications designed to draw the Zarathi agents into a controlled engagement away from civilian populations. She would leave school early, claiming to feel sick, then take a predetermined route through the city that would lead her into a carefully prepared trap. It's dangerous, Agent Martinez warned. Even with our best preparation, there are variables we can't control. Zarathi technology is still not fully understood, and their combat capabilities exceed human norms in several key areas. Maya thought about her friends gathered in the robotics lab, working enthusiastically on their competition project while completely unaware that alien agents might be planning their deaths. She thought about Brad Morrison, who would probably spend the rest of his life believing that his biggest problem was dealing with difficult classmates. She thought about Dr. Vasquez, who had offered kindness and stability to a damaged stranger without asking for anything in return. When do we start? Maya asked. The plan went into effect the following morning. Maya attended her regular classes while discreet agents took positions throughout the city. At lunch, she made a point of mentioning to Alex and Sarah that she was feeling unwell and might leave early, information that would be relayed to any surveillance teams monitoring her conversations. During chemistry class, Maya deliberately spilled a solution on her shirt, providing a plausible excuse to visit the nurse's office. From there, she was quietly escorted out of the building through a side exit, where Agent Kim waited with a civilian vehicle. Remember, he said, as they began driving toward the predetermined intercept zone, the goal is to draw them into the open, not to engage directly. Your job is to be visible and vulnerable until our teams can close the trap. Maya nodded, though every instinct screamed against deliberately making herself a target. During her military service, survival had depended on being unpredictable, using cover effectively, and maintaining tactical superiority over enemy forces. Now she was being asked to act like helpless prey. The route took them through downtown area, past several shops and restaurants where undercover agents waited with concealed weapons. Maya kept her posture relaxed and her movements casual, playing the role of an ordinary teenager heading home from school early. The attack came at the third checkpoint, in the parking lot behind a small electronics store. Maya felt the familiar tingle of electromagnetic interference that accompanied Zarathi technology, followed by the shimmer of air that indicated cloaking devices powering down. Two figures materialized 10 feet away, humanoid in shape, but clearly non-human in their proportions and movements. Their faces were hidden behind adaptive camouflage masks, but Maya recognized the distinctive weapon configurations from her combat experience. Maya Chen, one of them said in accented English, the voice synthesized by a translation device. You will come with us for questioning about human military capabilities. Maya raised her hands in apparent surrender while covertly activating the emergency beacon hidden in her jacket sleeve. I'm just a student, she said, projecting fear and confusion. I don't know anything about military stuff. Your academic work suggests otherwise. Your propulsion designs indicate access to classified human technology. Agent Kim's voice crackled through the tiny earpiece hidden in Maya's ear. Keep them talking. Teams are moving into position. I don't understand, Maya continued, backing slowly toward the predetermined extraction point. It was just a school project. We were making everything up. The second Zarathi agent raised what appeared to be some kind of scanning device. Biometric analysis confirms identity. This is the target from the Kepler 442 engagement. Maya felt a chill of recognition. The Kepler 442 system had been one of her most significant military actions, a desperate defense of a mining colony that had cost hundreds of human lives but prevented the Zarathi from obtaining strategic resources. If these agents had identified her from that battle, then they knew exactly what she was capable of. That's impossible, she said, maintaining her cover story. I've never been to space. Physical scarring patterns match medical records from military field hospitals, the agent continued, its scanner producing soft beeping sounds. Shrapnel damage consistent with close-quarters combat against Zarathi forces. The scanning was taking too long. Maya's earpiece carried Agent Martinez's urgent voice. Teams in position. Give us the signal. Maya dropped the pretense of helplessness and rolled sideways as the first shots erupted around the parking lot. Agent Kim's team opened fire from concealed positions while Maya drew the compact pistol she had hidden in her backpack. 3 years of combat experience reasserted themselves as she moved with fluid precision, seeking cover while returning accurate fire. The Zarathi agents were fast and well-equipped, but they had expected to capture a helpless teenager rather than engage a trained soldier supported by federal agents. The battle lasted less than 3 minutes, ending when both aliens were either neutralized or forced to retreat under their cloaking fields. As emergency vehicles arrived and Agent Kim coordinated the cleanup operation, Maya sat on the curb and realized that her attempt at normal civilian life was officially over. There would be no more robotics club meetings, no more chemistry labs, no more pretending that she could simply be another high school student. Dr. Vasquez arrived within an hour, having been notified by the DEA that Maya was safe, but that her temporary placement was being terminated for security reasons. Maya found herself hugging her guardian goodbye, neither of them quite sure what to say. I'm sorry, Maya whispered. I never wanted to put you in danger. I know, sweetheart. I just wish... Dr. Vasquez's voice trailed off, but Maya understood. They both wished for a world where 17-year-old girls didn't have to carry the weight of interstellar warfare. Agent Martinez approached with official paperwork and a sympathetic expression. Maya, we're transferring you to a secure facility for debriefing and reassignment. Given today's events, it's clear that standard civilian integration isn't going to work. Maya nodded, though part of her wanted to protest, to demand the right to return to her friends and her science competition and her carefully constructed normal life. But she had always known that her war was not over, that the peace she had found at Lincoln High School was temporary and fragile. As the federal vehicles prepared to leave, Maya caught sight of Alex and Sarah arriving in Sarah's car, probably coming to check on their sick friend who had left school early. They saw the emergency vehicles and government agents, saw Maya being escorted toward an unmarked van, and their faces reflected confusion and concern. Maya wanted to explain, to tell them that their friendship had meant everything to her, that their acceptance had provided the first genuine happiness she had experienced since leaving the battlefield. Instead, she could only wave goodbye before climbing into the van that would take her back to whatever classified facility would become her new temporary home. Through the rear window, she watched Lincoln High School's ordinary chaos recede into the distance, along with her brief experiment in being a normal teenager. The war continued, and Maya Chen, veteran, soldier, guardian of humanity's future, was once again called to serve. But she carried with her something new: the memory of friendship freely given, of intellectual challenges pursued for pure curiosity rather than survival, of a few precious months when her greatest worry had been completing chemistry homework rather than coordinating orbital strikes. Those memories would sustain her through whatever battles lay ahead, reminding her exactly what she was fighting to protect. The girl, who had left the front lines to enter high school chaos, was returning to her war, but she was no longer the same person who had tried to disappear into civilian life. She had learned that heroism could take many forms, that there were different ways to serve humanity's future, and that even in the midst of interstellar conflict, there was still room for hope, friendship, and the simple joy of solving difficult problems with people who understood the beauty of discovery. The van carried her toward an uncertain future, but Maya faced it with renewed purpose and the quiet confidence of someone who had discovered that even soldiers could still be human.